Hello, everybody. My name is Amira Shawi Badawi. I am a professional certified coach from the International Coaching Federation. I am a leadership and well-being coach who specializes in occupational burnout. Today, we have a very special episode as it is the first in a series dedicated to the use of technology, namely artificial intelligence, in the well-being and wellness industry or services. It is a three-part series. First, we're going to talk about, just give a very brief introduction about the technology, because a lot of us who might work in the coaching or other industries adjacent to well-being and wellness might not be aware of how the technology works. We've been hearing a lot of terms and a lot of names have been kind of going around, but we might not be aware of how it works. So we're not going to go in, very technical details, but I think it's important that we understand how the technology works. So this will be the first part. The second part, we're going to talk about how can we use technology or how it is being used currently in the industry. And in the final episode, we will talk about the ethical considerations for the use of such a technology in our field, whether it is from a technical perspective, the technical ethics, and also, of course, the coaching ethics. This episode is also very, very special because we have our first guest speaker ever. We have Dr. Dina Salah, Assistant Professor in Computer Science and Software Engineering or Development. I messed that up. Hello, Dina, and welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Amira. How is everything with you?
Everything. Thank you.
I'm very glad to be with you today, and it's a really interesting topic, and it's a very recent topic as well. So it's really good that you are approaching it early on, and I will just try to keep it as simple as I can to explain what ChatGPT is and give a bit of a background about it. So basically, ChatGPT is a form of a chatbot. Okay, so what is a chatbot? A chatbot is a software that asks you questions and provide you answers. So basically, it asks Amira a question, and then Amira gives her an answer. So it asks her another question, and so on. So it's like a conversation that's going on, a software that's able to provide you with a conversation, okay? And with any conversation, it's two-way. So I can ask the chatbot a question, and the chatbot will give me a reply, and the opposite can happen as well, okay? So
Dina, when you say software, you mean it's a program?
It's a program. Yes, it's a program. It's a program, and this is not as new as we think it is. So chatbots, actually, the first chatbot was in the 1960s. Its name was Eliza, and actually it used scripted responses. So it was not like very advanced, but it was able to ask questions. You can ask Eliza questions, and Eliza would provide you with answers, but these answers were scripted. So Eliza was not intelligent enough to come up with answers that it learned on itself, okay? So basically, Eliza, and this is very related to what we are discussing today, Eliza was focused on being a therapist. So it was made in order to help people who need therapy, okay? And since then, chatbots have developed largely. So in the 1990s and in the 2000s, they started, since it's a software that you can ask questions to, and it can provide you with answers. So they started using it. Microsoft specifically started using chatbots in customer service, okay? Because this is mainly the core of customer service, is a customer asking a question and is provided with an answer. But with customer service also, these questions are repetitive. Somehow they are repetitive. So if you have a particular issue with a software, it's a high probability that another customer would have also a similar issue with the software. So rather than us dedicating an employee to answer these questions, what we do is that they created this chatbot, and they gave this chatbot with all the possible questions that you can be asked, and the chatbot has all the answers, and it was pretty successful. And then we moved to another era, another phase, where now we have something where the chatbot can use machine learning in order to provide them with a certain amount of data on a particular topic, and they use this data in order to learn. So for example, if I'm trying to teach a chatbot how to write computer code, okay? So what I basically do is that I give him a piece of, I give him the commands of a particular programming language. Let's just say it's C++. So I give him, this is the commands of C++. So the chatbot would learn these commands. And then I would give him code that, for example, does a certain computation. And I would tell him that this is a good code for doing this computation. And then I would give him another code and I tell him that this is a bad code to do this computation because of so and so. It takes longer time, it consumes the computer memory, it consumes the processor, and so on. So it's as if you're teaching a child. So we give him good things and bad things. We give him data to learn from. And the computer or the software starts to improve and improve and improve and learn on its own. And this is where all the advances happened in recent years. So basically, chatbots are not new. They are since the 1960s, but they improved greatly due to the introduction of machine learning, okay?
So, Dina, if I could just interrupt, I apologize. Because when you started saying, you ask it questions and it responds back, it kind of evoked the image of Google a little bit.
Okay, this is very nice and a very interesting question. So actually, first of all, it's not like Google because sadly, Google has access to much more data than ChatGPT, okay? ChatGPT doesn't have access to the internet. ChatGPT, and this is its first limitation. ChatGPT has access to certain amount of data that was given to it by open API researchers and scientists. So it has access to certain digital book libraries, to certain code documentation, to certain coding languages, to certain internet resources, but not to Google. So
when you say certain, it's like certain topics as well. It's not just all topics.
Well, exactly. Certain topics and certain selected also choices from these topics. So chosen again by OpenAI, and OpenAI did not share what was the criteria that they used for choosing these kind of resources. Okay.
So OpenAI, what is this? Is this a company?
It's the company that has generated or created ChatGPT. Okay.
Oh, okay. So if you would allow me just to recap to make sure that our audience kind of grasp what you said. So the biggest difference here is that ChatGPT is fed certain information, certain data in order to learn from it.
Yes.
This data was selected by the company that created ChatGPT, which is it's an infamous or famous, I don't know, chatbot at the moment. So it was fed certain data on certain topics, not all the data on certain topics. It was a set amount of data on set amount of topics, and in order to learn from this data.
Exactly. And I didn't finish answering your question as well, Amira. As I told you, it's a very important question, which is the difference between ChatGPT and Google. So the first difference is that actually Google has access to much wider set of resources, okay? Whereas ChatGPT has access to a selected amount of resources. This is the first difference. The second difference is the conversation is pretty different, because we don't have a conversation with Google. We write a question to Google, and Google have a list of web pages or resources, and we need to click on each one of them in order to know what this is about. Okay. But with ChatGPT, it's pretty different. With ChatGPT, I would actually ask, like, for example, if I ask ChatGPT, if I write to Google resources on burnout, which is a very important topic, what will Google do is that it will list either videos or photos or links on topics related to burnout, okay? Whereas with ChatGPT, the conversation will be very different. It will be a conversation. I would probably start by telling that I'm very interested in burnout, and I think I'm having some symptoms of burnout. So how can you help me? And then ChatGPT would say more questions. It will ask you more questions. It will tell, can you tell me more about the symptoms that you are having? And then you will answer ChatGPT. And then ChatGPT will ask you another question until it understands better about what you're going through. And then it will recommend a set of resources. Okay. So it's a natural language, and this is one of the core strengths of ChatGPT, that the conversation is in a natural language. It's in a human form. It's as if you're talking to someone else who's caring, and he cares, or it cares about you. So the conversation is actually very polite, very smooth, and it's as if you're talking to a friend, as if, okay? Another difference as well, Amira, and it's currently a very new research area and research topic as well, is that the way we phrase our questions to ChatGPT, it makes a big difference in how we get the answer. And this is what they call a prompt engineering. So how you are writing. Yes.
So can I answer your question? Say the way we phrase our question.
Yes. The way we phrase
and how we get our response.
Exactly. And I will tell you
I'm sorry for interrupting. Does this mean that our questions become a part of the AI's data that it learns from?
Exactly. It learns from when it's talking to us. Okay. So it means that Amira can ask the ChatGPT something about burnout, and you phrase your question in a particular way, so you will get an answer in a particular way. Whereas if Dina is asking the same question about burnout, but in a different setting or in a different sentence, she will probably get a different answer. And I will give you a concrete example. There was in software engineering, like somebody was trying to learn to use ChatGPT to be a better coder, to write better code. Okay, it was written in a research paper. So what they did is that they asked ChatGPT to they wrote a particular code, part of the code, and then they told ChatGPT, help me in writing the rest of this code. Okay. Or let me know what's wrong with this code. So you can use it in these two contexts, okay? So when ChatGPT replied, it was actually replying in a bit of a manner that's tilted towards advice. So it was like, I advise you to do this, I advise you to do that, I advise you to do so and so. This is the next time that the question was written, it specifically asked ChatGPT to please provide me with instructions to improve the code without using this manner of condescending manner where you're advising me as if you know better than me. Okay. So this is very, very interesting, because it means that I can control the tone of the conversation. I can control what kind of answer I get in a manner that's suitable for me. So this also is another difference between ChatGPT and Google. It tries its best to be as natural and as imitating to a human conversation as it can.
Okay, in the language in which it was created, so it's like natural to English speakers.
Exactly.
But when it comes to Arabic speakers with different dialects, with different ways of speaking, it might be a bit more complicated.
Exactly, and this will take some years to improve.
Okay. So going back to how it learns, you said that there are specific topics and specific information for these topics. And
yes,
it also uses the questions that they are asked.
Exactly. So basically, OpenAI as a company, and Elon Musk was one of the owners at a particular point in time, they actually were trying to provide the software with data to learn from. And as I said, they actually selected digital book libraries, code documentation, coding languages, some of the internet content, but ChatGPT does not have active connection to the internet. And the reason behind that is to provide credibility of data, because with the internet, you can have a website and you don't know what's the credibility of this website, where did this data come from. So they were actually doing this to protect the validity of the data that's used by the software in order to learn. However, this raises other questions as well. If you have done this, then you should be there should be some sort of visibility, like let us know what's the criteria that you have used in order to choose these particular data sets, okay? Mm-hmm. But we don't know anything about it. OpenAI does not share this. And this can actually raise a bit of concerns related to biases. Mm-hmm. There's also something that shows, and we have to speak about this because it's relatively making a lot of people a bit skeptical about using the software, which is hallucinations. Hallucinations is when you, for example, go to ChatGPT and you ask ChatGPT and say, provide me with the most recent resources on burnout, okay? And then ChatGPT would provide you with a list of references, and you go through the list. It's 10 references, for example. 4 of them actually look very credible. However, when you search for them, you discover that there's no such references in the world. So, and this is what they call hallucinations. So the software sometimes hallucinates. It provides you with data that looks very convincing, but when you go after this data, it's not there. Okay.
I mean, this
is because, yeah, and it's coming out in a lot of things. For example, in providing you with a reference list, in providing you with the name of a book, sometimes in providing you with a piece of information. So why is this happening? It's very early to know, but there is research going on in order to understand it.
But because it learns, the more it's being used, the better it becomes.
Exactly, Amira. This is it. There's also another thing that would help people set their expectations. Mm-hmm. ChatGPT was not created for a certain purpose. For a certain domain. Okay, so the purpose was for it to be a conversational software, a software where you can have a conversation with it in a natural language form, in a form that's not computer code. I don't need to write a computer code in order to talk to this software. We can chat as we chat with each other, okay, in our natural language. But it was not created for a certain domain. So it was not created for coaching. It was not created to be for therapy. It was not created for medicine. Okay, but this is only the beginning, because it's very promising. It's very successful. So what is happening now is that each specific domain is actually trying to build the data set for their domain that can be used by ChatGPT to be a specialized chatbot in the domain. So this is naturally is happening in programming. So there is a collaboration between OpenAI and GitHub as a company in order to make a specialized version of ChatGPT that is used for programming, to help you improve your code, to help you complete your code, to help you learn how to code. Okay, and I imagine that the future will see a lot of such activities in different domains, maybe in coaching, maybe in therapy, maybe in medicine. Actually, medicine is one of the areas that have invested a lot in experimenting with ChatGPT and in trying to improve it as well.
Okay, but as I understood from your explanation, it all depends on the data sets that are used to feed the application or the software. So exactly. So when a company decides to dedicate or to create a chatbot for therapy or coaching, it will depend on the data sets that they use to build this the database from which the app will learn.
Exactly. And since somebody gets to choose the data set, then this, whoever it is, whoever is responsible for this can be facing a lot of biases and a lot of discrimination, and there should be visibility to how the process was made. And there is multiple examples about certain softwares like Face App and other softwares that we have all used. And after using the software for a while, we discovered that this software, the data of the software has some sort of a bias. And then they produce another version of the software to improve the state and so on. Okay, so it's an ongoing process.
This bias part, because you mentioned medicine. And I mean, there's a lot of rhetoric around the bias of the data related to research regarding medicine, because for a very long time, all the experiments were conducted on Caucasian, mostly male Caucasians. So there's a lot of rhetoric around how some of the data doesn't fit in with African Americans, for example, or women. So there was an implicit bias. I don't know if it's implicit or explicit, but let's assume best case scenario it wasn't any explicit. It was implicit bias. When they were doing their experiments, they would choose certain people, and therefore the outcomes do not necessarily translate across genders and across ethnicities. So similarly, what you're saying is that because somebody selects the data sets, there will almost always be biases depending on this person who is selecting the data set.
Exactly.
They will have biases.
Exactly. And there's also a lot of interesting examples because as I told you, the ChatGPT is in recent state now, and like there's a lot of experiments that's going on, a lot of research. So, for example, one of the researchers actually tried to ask ChatGPT about their opinion in Donald Trump, for example. Yeah. And ChatGPT didn't provide positive feedback about him, whereas it provided more positive feedback about Joe Biden. So people were joking about does it have is ChatGPT, does it have certain political certain political tendency, and how would you know? I mean, we don't know. Again, we don't know what are the criteria that was used in order to train the data set of ChatGPT. So as long as we don't know, then you cannot 100% trust the results that you're getting. Okay.
And this is very interesting because as coaches, again, we are human beings. So we all have biases, Yeah. A big part of our training is becoming aware of our biases, which happens in our thoughts before we kind of formulate a question or anything. The way we're thinking, the way we're perceiving somebody, this is where our biases kind of hide. So a big part of our training is to explore our thoughts and our perceptions, becoming aware of our biases, and then eliminating such biases from popping up during the session. But it's all built on awareness of thought. So this chatbot doesn't have thoughts, it has data. Will it be able to become aware of a bias if a bias comes up? Because all the data that they're referring to it doesn't challenge itself. I don't know if I'm making myself clear. Like we learn how to challenge when we get a certain thought, a certain belief, we learn how to challenge this.
So to answer your question, it's a solid yes. If the software was given data to identify biases, like for example, if I give it a set of data and I tell it that this data, it reaches a particular conclusion about Caucasian people, okay? And this is bias. And then I give it another example and I tell it that this data reaches a particular conclusion about Chinese people and it's biased. So I'm teaching the software what bias is. And then I ask the software explicitly, when you face a particular set of data that you identify as bias, then flag this, okay? It will learn. It will learn. It's like a child, and you can teach a child anything if you use the proper tools, the proper techniques, and the proper data. Okay, so it can definitely do that.
That's unbiased in itself. This is the proper data that's unbiased.
Yeah. Yes. So this is the dilemma. Yeah. So how would we do that? How would we even choosing what kind of data to train the software about bias can be biased? Yeah.
So I have a question. I mean, and again, it's just based on my dated, very old kind of information about technology. Usually when we come up with an idea about technology, it's to solve something, solve a problem. So in the beginning, computers could crunch massive amount of information and do tedious, mundane jobs so that we can release human beings to do more intelligent jobs. What is the objective of something like a chatbot? What is the problem that it's going to solve using a natural, more humane way of dialogue?
Okay, so the first thing that came to my mind now when you're, of course, there is a lot of benefits, but the first thing is disabled people, like accessibility issues. Accessibility is a huge topic in the computer science, which is related to making computers and software and everything more accessible to people who are disabled, whether they are blind, partially blind, suffering from learning disabilities like dyslexia, whatever. Okay, so basically the fact that somebody who is impaired, whether it's a hearing impaired or vision impaired or something, would be able to use this conversation bot in a form of conversation to ask about the shortest route to so and so, to ask about how can I learn so and so, what's the easiest way to learn this topic, what should I take care of when I'm going to this area, which areas to avoid, and so on. So the benefit is massive for people who are disabled. It's massive. Let me tell you something about psychology or about coaching. Sometimes when there's a really, really good psychologist or a coach, you can have a waiting list, a really long waiting list. Okay. What if I have a quick question to answer? To ask. I mean, like, it's just a quick question. It's a frequently asked question. It's just related to something I can read until our next session on a particular topic, on stress, for example. Mm-hmm. And I'm unable to access this therapist or whatever. Okay, so maybe ChatGPT can help in that. So the fact that ChatGPT is very convenient. It's available all the time. It's available from your home. You don't need to commute anywhere, and it's accessible. You can access it whenever, at whichever time. Whether it will provide you with the high quality results as a professional coach, this is definitely a no, because as I said, it was not, what?
At the moment, I mean, it's no
at the moment, because it was not created to be to be specifically focused on the coaching domain or the therapy domain or the or such domains. But there is, and we will probably speak about this a bit further on our third session when we are speaking about the ethical concerns related to ChatGPT. The human interaction is very different. From even the natural language that's used by the ChatGPT. It is different. ChatGPT will not tell you that it cares for you. ChatGPT will not tell you that I'll be there for you. These things that all humans need, this sincerity, because you can hear the same word from two people and you would believe the first one and you wouldn't believe the second one. Somebody would tell, I will be there for you, and you believe them. Somebody else would say the same, and you know that you cannot take their word for granted. So this is something that ChatGPT can never reach, okay? And I'm not saying that this will never happen. It will improve, because at first, for example, with artificial intelligence is a very powerful domain. Artificial intelligence, it started at first as robots. For example, they started like the movie I, Robot, where it's just metal gear and everything is in metal, and he walks in a very robotic way, and even its sound is very robotic. We moved all the way to humanoids, where a robot would look like a human. And Japan, for example, they have these experiments where they made humanoids walk in the street, and people didn't even and interact with people, and people didn't identify that they were robots for a long number of hours. So there will be improvement. For example, the first thing that would come to mind is that a humanoid can use ChatGPT, and you can have this conversation with the humanoid, but actually what you're speaking with is ChatGPT. So we will be seeing a lot of improvements, and but it will never be 100% like dealing with a human person, especially in topics that needs this kind of empathy or to be sympathizing. It will never be able to give us that. Okay,
I mean, this is
at least like a human.
Yeah, I mean, this is very interesting, and I think it's nice to end on this topic because it'll segue into our second episode, inshallah. But before we go, I just want to ask you one question: are we getting closer to passing the Turing test? Where Alan Turing, just a very quick background, Alan Turing was one of the pioneers in computers, had a test to see if he was chatting with a computer or not. So do you think we're getting closer for computers to pass this test?
Well, actually, computers did pass this test. There's multiple instances where computer programs pass the Turing test. So this already happened. So we're past this, and we're seeing much more about
every computer passing the test. So it's not just some. It's like every computer might be able to pass that test at one point.
There are reported instances in research papers that this already happened.
Yeah,
that computers have passed the Turing test. And if you would like me to provide like the reference for that to be put in the comments or whatever, I would be happy to do that.
I mean, we'll see the comments we get if people are interested. Yeah, we
your voice is breaking, Amir.
Yeah, we'll see if people are interested in the references when we get comments. If we get comments, we'll provide it accordingly, inshallah. So Dr. Dina, I wanted to thank you for being a part of our session today, or our podcast today.
I'm sorry, I lost the connection.
It's okay. Again, I just wanted to thank you for being a part of our episode today. Thank you so much for all the very valuable information. And I think as human beings first and coaches second, I think it's important to be aware of these kind of advances and see how they go. So if anybody's listening and you're interested, tune into our next episode where we talk about specific uses of AI and technology in general, because wearables have also been kind of being used in our field for some time. So we will discuss that in the next episode, inshallah. So thank you everybody for listening, and thank you once again, Dr. Dina, for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Amira. It has been a pleasure. Thank you.